My cop wife used her access to protect her drug dealer AP, so I made sure she lost everything. It's hard to explain just how quickly everything in my life turned upside down. 1 minute, everything seemed like it was moving along fine, and the next, I was staring at the end of a marriage I thought was built on trust. My name's Kenneth, and I'm 29 years old. I've been married to Cassidy for 2 years, but we've been together for 5. She's 26, a police officer with the Metro Police Department, and I work in supply chain management for a restaurant equipment company. It's not glamorous work, but it pays the bills, and I'm home every night by 6. I thought that was enough. Cassidy, though, she had bigger plans. She was the type to rise early and work late, always chasing the next promotion, the next step in her career. She was so focused on climbing that ladder, and, at first, I thought I was just the steady one keeping things grounded. Her life, her ambitions, they came first, and mine always seemed to take a backseat. I wasn't complaining, at least not out loud. But it didn't take long for me to notice the cracks. It started small. Late night shifts, sudden, emergency, calls, things she never fully explained. She'd come home, tired, distracted, and I just assumed it was part of the job. But as the months passed, I started noticing more. Her phone buzzing at strange hours. She'd get texts at 2 in the morning, texts that weren't from her partner, not from her boss, but from someone named Jay. I didn't think much of it at first, just figured it was a colleague or maybe a friend. But then the late nights started piling up, and her attitude shifted. One night in April, she came home and dropped the bomb. She had back-to-back shifts, wouldn't be home until Thursday morning. It wasn't the first time she'd worked long hours, but this time was different. She said it was for some big operation, and they needed all hands on deck. When I asked her how things were going, she rolled her eyes and snapped, "Don't wait up. Not like you ever do anything interesting anyway." That one stung. That's when I remembered the old laptop we had tucked away in the closet. Before she got her work-issued tablet, we used to share it. It had been collecting dust for months, but it still had all her accounts logged in. She'd never thought to log out. So, around 11 that night, I pulled it out, opened it up, and there it was. Her iCloud account still synced. I knew exactly what I was about to see. I shouldn't have, but I couldn't stop myself. I opened her messages. At first, it was all innocent enough. There were texts, flirtatious at worst. "Hey, beautiful, miss you already." That kind of thing. My stomach twisted, but I kept reading. I had to know. Then came February. The messages took a darker turn. She was venting, complaining about me, about our life. Said I was a deadweight, a loser with no ambition. She said I made her skin crawl when I touched her. Said coming home to me was like coming home to a corpse. He agreed with everything. He told her she deserved more. She deserved someone who appreciated her. And, damn, I hated every word of it. But I kept reading. I couldn't stop. By March, it went further. Jay was now talking about police matters. He'd mentioned being followed, worried about the cops watching him. She responded with a screenshot of confidential police info. Details from the department's case management system. She was helping him, feeding him inside information. That was the moment I knew everything had changed. My wife wasn't just having an affair. She was risking lives, destroying careers, and I was standing in the middle of it all, unable to stop it. Every text, every screenshot, every lie. It was all there, plain as day. She was not the woman I married. And I had a choice to make. I could bury my head in the sand and pretend I didn't know. Or I could do something about it. What I didn't know was how deep this rabbit hole would go, or how much it would cost me to uncover the truth. But the moment I saw that screenshot, I knew things would never be the same. And The only thing I could do now was make sure she lost everything. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had found on that laptop. Every text, every image. It all felt like a punch in the gut. Cassidy, my wife, the woman I thought I knew, was a complete stranger. And she was involved in something much darker than I could ever imagined. I spent the next couple of days replaying everything over in my mind. The text with Jay, the screenshots of confidential police files she had sent him. It was hard to even wrap my head around it. But there was one thing I knew for sure: I couldn't let this go. Not for her, not for us, but for me. I had to protect myself. I had to make sure I wasn't dragged into her mess. I had saved everything. Every screenshot, every conversation, every photo. I knew what to be smart about how I handled it. The next day, the last thing I wanted was to destroy her career. But she had put us both in this position. I wasn't the one who'd broken our trust. And if it came down to it, I was prepared to take it all the way. By the time she came home, the weight of everything had started to sink in. She had no idea what I knew. She walked in around 8 in the morning, looking exhausted from her shift. Her uniform was wrinkled, her hair a mess, but she still managed to smile when she saw me. It was that smile that used to make me feel like everything was going to be okay, but now it just felt empty. "Hey babe, you're up early," she said, her voice still thick with sleep. "Couldn't sleep," I muttered, trying to keep my emotions in check. I was about to confront her with everything, and the calm I had been trying to hold on to was slipping away. She leaned against the counter, poured herself a cup of coffee, and gave me a curious look. "You okay?" I looked at her, this woman who had become so cold, so distant, and I realized I wasn't even sure who she was anymore. But I wasn't going to back down. I had to do this. I had to face the truth, no matter how much it hurt. I pulled out my phone, opened the photos, and turned it toward her. "Want to explain why there's a bag of pills in your gym bag?" She froze. Her face went pale. I watched as her hands trembled and the mug she was holding stopped halfway to her lips. "Your car, your gym bag, side pocket. Want to tell me what that's about?" She set the mug down carefully, the first sign of unease I had seen in her. Then, just like I feared, she put on the mask, the one she probably used when she was interrogating suspects. "You went through my car?" she asked, her voice steady, though there was a hint of defensiveness in it. "You're seriously asking me that right now?" I shot back, my voice rising. "There's enough pills in that bag to stock a pharmacy, Cassidy. What the hell is going on?" She crossed her arms, the same defensive posture she used whenever she was cornered. "It's not what it looks like." "What is it then?" I asked, my patience thinning. "You're holding it, a police officer, holding drugs for a drug dealer. It's complicated. Just until he moves it. It's temporary," she said, her voice shaking a little, but she still tried to downplay it. She was so damn good at it. "Uncomplicated," I replied, my voice firm, feeling the weight of everything I had learned. "You've been helping a drug dealer avoid arrest. You're leaking case files to him. You're putting people's lives at risk." She didn't say anything for a moment. She just stared at me, as if the words hadn't fully sunk in. I could see the wheels turning in her head, the desperate search for a way out. I wasn't done, though. "I've seen everything, Cassidy. The texts, the screenshots. I know about Jay. I know about your affair. Hell, I know about the last time you two slept together, and I can't unsee it. How long were you planning on keeping up the lie?" Her face crumpled for a second, the tough exterior faltering. For a moment, I thought I might see a crack in her armor. But then, just as quickly, the coldness returned. "You don't understand," she said, her voice low, almost pleading. "I was trying to help him. He was scared. I didn't want him to get hurt. Ooh. You were in love with him, I said, almost whispering. Don't act like this was some humanitarian mission. You betrayed me. You betrayed everything we built. She wiped her eyes, the tears falling freely now. She stopped, almost as if she were trying to gather herself. Then, the mask slipped completely. Her eyes turned cold. If you turn me in, I'll make sure you go down with me, she said, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. I'll say, I found the drugs in your stuff. I'll say you pressured me into looking up information. I'll say you've been abusive. Who do you think they'll believe? A police officer or a supply chain guy? I stared at her for a moment, my stomach sinking. I could feel the rage building inside me. But I had to keep my cool. This wasn't just about anger. This was about survival. You're threatening to frame me, I said, voice steady. I'm not doing anything to you. You destroyed us the moment you started sleeping with him. She wiped the tears away, and for a second, I almost felt guilty. But that guilt didn't last long. I was done. Done with the lies, done with the manipulation. She took a step closer to me, her voice dropping to a whisper. Delete everything. You don't understand what you're doing. No, I said, shaking my head. Not happening. She stepped closer, almost daring me to back down. You don't get it, Kenneth. This could ruin you. It could ruin everything. Her voice was pleading now, desperate. You have no idea what you're messing with. I stood my ground, feeling a sense of finality wash over me. No, Cassidy, you don't get it. You did this. You made your choices. She stared at me for a long moment, her expression shifting. Then, without another word, she turned and left the kitchen, leaving me standing there, holding everything that could destroy her. And as much as it hurt, I knew I had to follow through. She was already gone. The woman I had married, the woman I thought I knew, had disappeared a long time ago. And now, I had to make sure she lost everything. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind was racing, replaying everything over and over again. The texts, the drugs, the threats. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, but it wasn't the woman I'd married. It was someone else. Someone I didn't recognize. And the worst part was, I didn't know how far it had gone, or how much damage had already been done. But I knew one thing for sure, I had to act. I couldn't let this go, not anymore. Not after everything she'd done. It wasn't long before she came home. She walked in through the door, looking tired and frazzled from another shift. She had that same look she always had, when she thought everything was normal. The look that said she thought she could keep hiding, keep pretending. I had no intention of letting her do that. Hey, she said, her voice casual. You okay? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I pulled out my phone. Her eyes flickered to it, and I could tell she knew something was off. I opened the photo album, swiping through the pictures I had taken. Screenshots, the video of the drugs in her car. I didn't need to say much. I just handed it to her, face up. She glanced at the screen, her face going pale as she saw the pills, the screenshots, the evidence of everything she'd done. She dropped the phone like it was on fire, her breath catching in her throat. She didn't say anything for a long moment. It was like time stopped, and all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. What's all this? She asked, her voice trembling, but she quickly regained control. Want to explain why there's a bag of pills in your gym bag? I asked, my voice calm but firm. The rage I felt was building, but I had to keep it in check. I couldn't let her manipulate me again. She took a step back, her eyes darting between the phone and me. You've been through my things, she asked, voice tight with disbelief. You've been through mine for months. I shot back. Don't act like this is something new. She looked at the ground, not able to meet my gaze. It's not what you think, I said, my voice rising slightly. You've been leaking classified police information to a drug dealer, Do you understand what that means? She looked up at me then, her expression shifting, like she was trying to find a way out, trying to talk her way out of it, but the truth was already out. There was no hiding anymore. You don't get it, she said, voice softer now, but with an edge. I was trying to protect him. He's been scared. I didn't want him to get caught. I shook my head, disbelief written all over my face. Protect him. By breaking the law. By jeopardizing your career, your entire life, for him. Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I thought she might finally crack, finally admit everything. But instead, she took a deep breath and straightened herself up. The cold, calculating look I had seen so many times before came back. You don't understand? I didn't have a choice, she said, her voice now icy. I stepped forward, my anger finally breaking through. A choice. You chose him over me, over everything we had. You've been lying to me, betraying me, and for what? For him. Her lips trembled, and for a split second, I thought she might apologize, might break down and finally own up to what she'd done. But instead, she just stood there, silent. You've been feeding him confidential files, raid schedules, names of informants. Do you even understand how many lives you've put at risk? How many people could die because of what you've done? I was trying to help him. She shouted suddenly, her voice breaking. He was scared. I was trying to protect him. I shook my head, the weight of her words sinking in. You were in love with him, I said quietly, the words cutting through the tension like a knife. This wasn't about helping anyone. This was about you getting something you wanted. You destroyed everything for a man who doesn't even care about you. She flinched as if I had slapped her. Her eyes welled up with tears, but she didn't speak. I didn't give her the chance to apologize. I was done listening to her lies. You've been helping a drug dealer evade arrest, I said, my voice steady now, though my insides were a mess. And now, you're trying to manipulate me. You want me to delete everything, to cover your tracks. But I'm not going to. This ends now. Her face twisted with anger and fear, and I saw it then. The fear that she was losing control. The fear that everything she had done would come crashing down on her. If you turn me in, she threatened, voice low and cold, I'll make sure you go down with me. I'll say the drugs are yours. I'll say you pressured me into looking up information. I'll say you've been abusive. I laughed, a bitter sound. You're threatening to frame me now? After everything you've done? You've lost your mind. She stepped forward, but I didn't flinch. You don't understand what you're doing, she said, her voice trembling with anger and desperation. If you go to the cops, if you turn me in, you'll ruin everything. Do you want that? No, I said, my voice steady. You ruined everything the moment you chose him over me. She took a deep breath and wiped the tears from her face. Her hands were shaking. Then you're really going to destroy me, aren't you? I'm not destroying you, I replied, my voice calm. You did that yourself. She stood there, speechless, and I could feel the weight of her gaze on me. It wasn't a look of guilt. It wasn't even a look of regret. It was just coldness, empty, calculating coldness. I had to remind myself that this was not the woman I had loved. I'm done, I said, my voice firm. This conversation never happened. And if you don't get your stuff together, you'll lose everything. She didn't respond. She just stared at me, the coldness in her eyes growing. And in that moment, I knew I had no choice. I had to go to the police. I had to protect myself. Because if I didn't, she would drag me down with her. I walked out of the kitchen, leaving her standing there, broken and alone. The days after the confrontation were a blur. I spent most of my time holed up in the spare room, gathering everything I had on Cassidy, screenshots, timelines, photos. I documented every single thing I had found. I couldn't afford to make a mistake. This was bigger than a cheating spouse or a broken marriage. This was about criminal activity. This was about protecting myself. I kept going back to the idea that she had been trying to manipulate me. The threats she'd made. She knew just how to play on my emotions. How to make me feel guilty for wanting to do the right thing. But I wasn't going to let her win. Not this time. By the time she left for her shift, I was ready. I had everything set, files on a USB drive, a detailed timeline, all the evidence I could gather. It wasn't just for my own protection anymore. It was about making sure she didn't get away with what she had done. If she thought she could manipulate me into silence, she was wrong. I wasn't the man I used to be. I couldn't be. I couldn't stand the thought of her getting away with everything. I could already see how things would unfold if I stayed silent. I would be the one dragged down. I would lose everything she had taken from me, just to save face. So, I made the decision to report her. The phone call to my attorney was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I had known him for years. But this was a different kind of conversation. This was me telling him that my wife, someone he knew, someone he'd seen as a respectable officer, was in the middle of a major scandal. The kind of scandal that could ruin her life and mine. After I hung up, I took a deep breath and started preparing. I couldn't afford to leave any loose ends. I was methodical in how I set everything up. I knew how easily a story could be twisted, and I wasn't going to let that happen. It wasn't long before Cassidy came home, looking like the same woman who had walked out just days ago. Her uniform was wrinkled, her eyes tired, but she still had that mask on. The same mask I had seen before. The mask that made it seem like everything was fine, but nothing was fine. Not anymore. She walked into the living room, dropping her keys on the table. "Hey," she said, her voice flat. "What's going on?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I pulled out my phone again and showed her the video, the one I'd recorded when I had found the drugs in her car. The one that documented everything I had discovered. Her face went pale when she saw it, but she didn't move. She stopped, her words faltering. "Too late," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You've been lying to me for months, and you've been breaking the law for even longer. You don't understand," she whispered, her eyes avoiding mine. "I was just trying to help him." "You've been helping a drug dealer avoid arrest. You've been leaking information to him, giving him inside access to everything. Do you even hear yourself right now?" My voice was rising, but I couldn't stop it. The anger and betrayal were bubbling over. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt." "Well, they have, Cassidy. People could die because of what you've done." She looked up at me then, her eyes red, but there was no remorse in them. Only fear. Fear of getting caught. Fear of losing everything. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way," she said again, this time more desperately. "But it's too late now, isn't it?" I stared at her for a long moment. "You've done more than just make a mistake. This isn't a mistake. This is a choice." She shook her head, the tears streaming down her face. "I didn't want this. I never wanted to hurt you. You have to believe me." "I did believe you," I said, my voice almost a whisper now. "I believed you when you said we'd make it. I believed you when you said we were a team. But you threw that away. You threw us away for him." "I didn't know what to do," she sobbed. "He needed me. I couldn't just turn my back on him." "You turned your back on me, Cassidy," I said quietly. "And now you're going to face the consequences." She stopped crying, wiped her eyes, and took a deep breath. I could see the shift in her, the coldness returning. "You don't know what you're doing. If you report me, I'll make sure you go down with me. You'll lose everything too." I felt the familiar weight of her threat hanging in the air. But this time it didn't scare me. This time, I wasn't afraid of losing her. I had already lost her the moment she chose him over me. I'm not the one who's going to lose everything, I said. You are. She just stared at me, her expression hardening, and for a second, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered everything she had done, every lie she had told, every secret she had kept. There was no sympathy left, no room for understanding. I didn't say another word. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving her standing there, knowing full well what she had done, and knowing she had crossed a line she couldn't come back from. I was done. The next step was clear. It was time to make sure she lost everything. The next few days felt like a blur. I spent every moment compiling everything I had. The evidence. The screenshots. The recordings. I went through everything again and again, making sure I had it all. I couldn't afford any mistakes. I needed to be sure that, when I went to the authorities, there would be no question that I was telling the truth. Cassidy hadn't said much since our confrontation. She'd been going through the motions, but I could feel the tension in the air every time. She walked past me. It was like we were both just pretending. Pretending nothing had changed when everything had. I hadn't seen her break down like that before. She'd always been the one in control, the one with the upper hand. But now, everything was slipping through her fingers. And the worst part was, I couldn't even feel sorry for her. Not after everything she'd done. She had betrayed me. She had betrayed herself. And for what? For him. For a man who wouldn't even look back once he was done with her. It was the morning, after our confrontation, when I knew I had to act. I couldn't wait any longer. I couldn't let her control the situation anymore. I made the call to my attorney, the one I had known since college. He was a smart guy, and I trusted him. But this wasn't just a legal issue anymore. This was personal. Kenneth, he said, when he picked up, his voice steady but concerned. What's going on? I've been waiting to hear from you. I have to report her, I said, the words coming out flat. I can't let this go. I have everything, proof, recordings. I need to go to professional standards. There was a long pause on the other end, and I could almost hear him weighing his options. Are you sure about this? I know you're angry, but once this goes public, there's no turning back. I know, I said. But she put me in this position. She's put a lot of people in danger. I can't let her get away with it. All right, he said. I'll help you get everything together. You need to be sure that you've covered all your bases. We spent the next few hours going over the details. I told him everything, how I found the drugs, how I found the texts, everything Cassidy had done. I didn't hold anything back. If I was going to do this, I needed to make sure I had the truth on my side. By the time I finished, I was exhausted, emotionally drained. But there was no turning back now. I had to do it. I had to protect myself, even if it meant losing everything I had left with her. The next day, I called the professional standards office. The conversation felt surreal, like I wasn't even speaking to them about my life. I need to report an officer, I said, my voice calm but my hands shaking. I have evidence of criminal activity, and I believe she's using her position for personal gain. The officer, on the other end of the line, took down my information, and we set up a meeting. They told me they'd look into it. But I knew how these things went. It would take time, and I had to be ready for the fallout. That evening, Cassidy came home late again, just like she always did. The door creaked open, and I could hear her footsteps in the hallway. She didn't say anything, just dropped her keys on the table like nothing had changed. Like everything was normal. I was sitting on the couch, the TV muted, but my eyes weren't on the screen. They were on her. I watched her move around the room, her back to me. It was strange. We were both in the same house. But it felt like we were on opposite ends of the world. She turned toward me, her eyes catching mine for a moment before she quickly looked away. "You okay?" she asked, her voice too casual, like she didn't know what else to say. "Do you want to explain why I'm meeting with professional standards tomorrow?" I asked, my voice flat. I was done pretending. Her face froze. The smile she had on faded. And for the first time in days, I saw a flicker of something real in her eyes. Fear. She didn't speak for a moment, just stared at me. And then she started to backpedal. "You're just going to go through with this. You don't even know what you're doing." "Kenneth," she said, her voice low, pleading. "This is going to ruin us. It's going to ruin everything. Everything." I repeated, my voice thick with disbelief. "You're the one who destroyed it. You're the one who threw away everything we had for him." "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said, her voice cracking. "You have to understand, I was just trying to protect him." "Protect him?" I shook my head, the anger building again. "You endangered us both. You betrayed me, Cassidy. And now you're going to threaten me. You think I'm going to back down just because you say you're sorry." She stood there, her shoulders slumped, her face pale. She looked like she was about to say something more. But no words came out. She didn't have an explanation. She didn't have an excuse anymore. "I don't have time for this," I said, my voice cold. "You've made your choices. And now you'll face the consequences." I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. The weight of everything, of what I was about to do, hit me all at once. But there was no turning back. Not now. Cassidy was going to lose everything. And so was I, but in a way, I had already lost her. This was just the final step. I walked past her, not bothering to look back. The house felt colder than it had in years. And as I opened the door, I heard her voice one last time, almost a whisper. I never meant for this to happen. But it had. And now, it was too late. I spent the next few days in a state of tense anticipation. I had made the call to professional standards. And now, all I could do was wait. I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe a quick response, maybe a lengthy investigation, but either way, I knew that this was just the beginning of a long, painful road. Cassidy hadn't said much since our last conversation. She kept to herself, and I could feel the walls between us growing higher. I wasn't sure if it was guilt, shame, or fear keeping her silent, but I knew one thing for sure, she wasn't getting away with this. The knock on the door came around 11 in the morning. At first, I thought it was just another one of those random solicitors, the kind who drop by trying to sell you something you don't need. But when I opened the door and saw the two officers standing there, I immediately knew this was different. Their badges gleamed in the dim light, and their expressions were serious. Too serious. "Are you Kenneth?" the older one asked, his voice calm, but there was an edge to it. I nodded, suddenly feeling a rush of adrenaline surge through me. "Can we come in?" he asked, not waiting for an answer before stepping forward. I stepped back, letting them into the house. The younger officer kept his distance, standing near the door, as the older one moved inside, scanning the room quickly. It felt like I was being sized up. "Do you mind if we sit?" the older officer asked, his tone polite but firm. I gestured toward the couch, and we all sat down. The tension in the room was palpable. I could feel my heart beating harder with every second that passed. "We received your call," the older officer said, leaning forward. "You're reporting an officer for criminal activity." I nodded again, swallowing hard. "Yes. I have evidence that my wife, she's a cop with Metro PD, has been leaking classified police information to a drug dealer. I have screenshots, text messages, and even video footage." The younger officer raised an eyebrow. "This is serious stuff. Are you sure about all of this?" "I'm sure," I said, my voice steady despite the nerves twisting inside me. I've collected everything. You can verify it all. I gestured to the laptop on the coffee table, where I had everything backed up, ready for them to see. They exchanged a look, and I saw the older officer give a subtle nod to the younger one, signaling him to get the materials. I could hear the soft clicking of keys as the younger officer began going through the files on my laptop. Pulling up the evidence I had carefully organized, the older officer turned back to me. So, this officer, your wife, what exactly did she do? I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. She's been sending case files, surveillance schedules, and confidential information to a drug dealer she's been involved with. She's been using her access to the department's systems to keep him informed about ongoing investigations. She's even warned him about undercover operations. I've got the proof. It's all documented. The older officer nodded, his face expressionless. What's her name? Cassidy Clark, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She's a patrol officer with Metro PD. The younger officer returned with the documents I'd collected, a mix of screenshots and case files that showed everything from text exchanges to photos of the drugs I had found in Cassidy's car. He placed them in front of the older officer, who began flipping through them, pausing occasionally to study the details. This is quite a bit of material, the older officer said, glancing up at me. How long has this been going on? Months, I replied, my stomach turning. At least since January. I didn't know until recently, but I've been going through everything I could find. It's all here. The older officer sat back, his eyes narrowing slightly. And you didn't report this earlier. You've had all this evidence and waited until now. I could feel my frustration bubbling up again. I wasn't sure what I was dealing with at first. I didn't know the full extent of it. But when I found the drugs in her car, when I saw just how deep she was into this, I knew I had to take action. The younger officer shuffled through the papers, his face growing more serious as he looked over the texts between Cassidy and the drug dealer, Jay. This is serious, he muttered under his breath. The older officer cleared his throat and stood up, pacing the room slowly. We're going to need to verify everything. This is a big claim, and it's going to take some time. But if what you're saying is true, we'll need to move quickly. I understand, I said. I just want the truth to come out. She can't get away with this. The older officer stopped pacing and looked at me for a long moment. We'll take it from here. You've done the right thing by coming forward. But you need to know, this isn't going to be easy. There will be a lot of scrutiny, and you'll be involved in this process every step of the way. I'm ready, I said, more confident than I felt. I had made my decision. I couldn't go back now. The younger officer nodded, then turned to the older one. I think we've got enough for now. We should start with the investigation. Agreed, the older officer said, looking back at me. We'll be in touch. Don't speak to anyone about this, not even your wife. If she finds out you're cooperating with us, it could jeopardize the case. I nodded, the gravity of the situation sinking in. I wasn't just reporting her anymore, I was in this deep. The two officers stood up, and I followed them to the door. As they left, I felt a strange sense of finality. I had done it. I had taken the first step, and now, there was no going back. Cassidy would pay for what she had done. But it was hard not to feel a sense of loss. The woman I had loved, the woman I thought I knew, was gone. And in her place was someone unrecognizable, a stranger who had betrayed everything. As I closed the door behind them, I stood there for a moment, just staring at the empty hallway. The silence felt heavy, but it was a silence I had earned. And I wasn't sure I'd ever find peace again. But this was the beginning of something. something I had no choice but to see through to the end. The silence in the house was suffocating. It had been days since the officers came and went, and still, it felt like I was waiting for something. Some kind of sign that this was all going to end, that the nightmare Cassidy had dragged me into was finally going to be over. But there was no sign, just the same emptiness I'd been living with for months. Cassidy had barely spoken to me since that last confrontation. She'd gone back to work, pulling long shifts, barely acknowledging my presence when she was home. It was like we were living in parallel worlds, two people who had once shared everything, now unable to even make eye contact. I didn't know how she felt, but I knew how I felt: empty, betrayed, exhausted. I spent most of my time alone, either at work or holed up in the bedroom, pacing between the old life I had known and the one that had been torn apart. I didn't know what would come next. The investigation into Cassidy was moving forward, and I could feel it. Every phone call from my attorney, every meeting with the officers, brought me closer to the truth. I was so desperately trying to expose, but it also brought me closer to the inevitable, Cassidy's downfall. And then, one afternoon, it came. I was sitting at the kitchen table when my phone buzzed, and I saw the number from my attorney's office. I hesitated for a second before answering. "Hello. Kenneth." My attorney's voice was steady but laced with a hint of urgency. "We've got some updates. You need to get here as soon as possible." My heart rate spiked. "What's going on?" "We've confirmed everything," he said. "The investigation is moving fast. They're moving forward with the charges against your wife. We've got solid evidence. It's all pointing to her involvement in a major criminal operation. But we need you here. It's time to talk strategy." I felt a chill run through me. Part of me had been waiting for this moment, knowing it would come, but hearing it out loud made it real. Cassidy was going to be arrested. Her career was over, and no matter how much I tried to distance myself from it all, I knew that I was a part of this too. I had exposed her, and now there was no turning back. "I'll be there," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. I hung up, the weight of what was about to happen settling into my chest. I knew I had done the right thing, but that didn't make it any easier. When I arrived at my attorney's office, the gravity of the situation hit me like a ton of bricks. The walls of the small conference room felt like they were closing in, as my attorney laid out the details of the case. Cassidy's actions were more severe than anyone had expected. The drug dealer, Jay, had been under surveillance for months, and Cassidy's involvement in his operation was deeper than anyone had realized. She wasn't just leaking information. She was an active participant in his illegal activities. I listened as my attorney explained the charges. They were extensive: misuse of police systems, obstruction of justice, even possession with intent to distribute. There was no way she could deny what she had done. Not now. Not with the evidence they had. "The DA is pushing for serious charges," my attorney said, looking at me. "They're recommending a plea deal, but it's going to require your testimony." I swallowed hard. The idea of being involved in a courtroom, giving testimony, watching everything I had once known crumble, was almost too much to bear. But I couldn't back down now. This wasn't just about Cassidy anymore. This was about justice. About stopping her from dragging anyone else into the mess she had created. "You'll need to testify, but it could be the key to ending this quickly," my attorney continued. "If you want to move forward with the charges, you're going to have to be ready to step up." I nodded, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I wasn't sure if I was ready for all of this, but I had no choice. Cassidy had made her choices, and now I had to make mine. As I left the office, I felt numb. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was clear this was going to destroy Cassidy's life. And no matter how much I wanted to move on, I knew I couldn't escape the fallout. When I returned home, Cassidy was already there, sitting in the living room, her eyes red, rimmed from lack of sleep. She didn't say anything when I walked in. She just looked at me, almost as if she were waiting for me to say something. First, the silence between us was thick, suffocating. I had known this was coming. I had known there would be a reckoning. But seeing her there, broken and waiting for the other shoe to drop, made it real. You should have just walked away, I said quietly, my voice rough with emotion. You should have left this all behind. She didn't respond. She just looked at me, her eyes filled with regret, but it was too late for apologies. It was too late for anything. I didn't want it to end like this, she whispered, her voice cracking. I didn't mean for this to happen, but it had. And now, the consequences were coming for her. I know, I said softly, but you can't undo what you've done. I turned away then, unable to look at her any longer. She had made her choices, and now it was time for me to make mine. As I walked out of the room, I knew one thing for certain: no matter what happened next, my life would never be the same. I had done the right thing. I had exposed her for what she truly was, and no matter shit hurt, I was ready to face whatever came next. The finality of it all hit me harder than I expected. Cassidy's life was spiraling out of control, and there was nothing I could do to stop it, nothing I wanted to do anyway. I had made my choice. The investigation into her had moved fast. Within days of the meeting with professional standards, the charges were clear, and the decision was made. She had no way out. No one was going to protect her. She was alone in this now, and it was all because of the choices she made. I remember the day of the hearing. I didn't attend, but I got the call afterward. The lead investigator filled me in on the details, his voice almost businesslike. But there was a hint of something else there too. Maybe respect, or maybe just the gravity of what had happened. Cassidy had been fired. The charges were all true, every single one. She was going to face serious legal consequences, and her career was over. Do you want to know what happened at the hearing? The investigator asked. I nodded, even though I knew the answer. They played your evidence, Kenneth, everything. The messages, the photos, the drugs in her car, the case files, all of it. He paused as if to let that sink in. There was no defense. Not a single word from her lawyer that made any difference. I didn't know how to feel about that. There was no satisfaction, no sense of relief. The woman I had married was gone, and in her place was someone I could barely recognize. All I felt was empty, like a chapter of my life had been ripped out, and the page was just blank now. When I got the call from the district attorney's office, I didn't hesitate. They were offering Cassidy a plea deal. It wasn't mercy, it was leverage. The deal would keep her out of prison, but only if she pled guilty to official misconduct and accepted 5 years of probation. It wasn't much, but it was something. It meant she wouldn't serve time for the distribution charges. And that was something she was willing to take. It didn't make me feel better. It didn't make any of it right. I remember when my attorney called to let me know the deal was finalized. She signed the papers, he said, almost as if to confirm it was real. It's over, Kenneth. I didn't respond right away. I just sat there for a long time, staring at the phone, not knowing what I was supposed to feel. I had been waiting for this moment, hoping it would bring some kind of closure, but it didn't. It just felt like the end of something that had been broken for a long time. In the weeks that followed, I filed for divorce. Cassidy didn't contest it. She didn't ask for anything. The paperwork was signed. And just like that, we were no longer married. The woman I had once loved was now a stranger to me. She would be living with her parents, working some low-paying job to make ends meet. No more police badge. No more authority. No more power. It was hard, even in the quiet moments, not to feel the weight of it all. The text she sent me, the lies she told, the betrayal, everything had come crashing down. And yet, she still managed to make it all about her. The day she texted me, asking for help finding a job, I didn't respond. Not immediately. She had the audacity to ask me for a favor after everything. "I know you don't want to hear from me," she wrote, "but I'm desperate. I can't get hired anywhere. My background keeps coming up, and I can't find anything. Could you maybe talk to someone at your company? Please, I'll do anything." I sat there staring at the text for what felt like an eternity. I knew what I had to do, but part of me still wanted to help her, to show some kind of mercy. But then I thought about everything she had done to me, to us, and I knew there was nothing left to give her. So, I typed one simple response. "You made your choices. Live with them." I hit send and blocked her number. There was no second chance. There was nothing left to say. I moved on. My life started to rebuild itself. I got a promotion at work. My apartment felt like my own space again. I had a new beginning. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something to explode. I was living. I was free. 6 months later, I heard about her again. I heard from her brother, who texted me with one last message. "You got what you wanted. Hope it was worth it." I didn't respond. There was no point. And Cassidy. She was still living with her parents, still trying to piece together a life she had ruined. She'd never be a cop again. She'd never have the power or control she once had. She had thrown it all away for a man who didn't care. The last time I heard, she was working customer service for a cable company, barely scraping by, with a felony conviction on her record. And me, I was fine, better than fine. I was living my life, free from the weight of her lies. Free from the mess she had made. I couldn't change the past, but I could control what happened next. And for the first time in a long time, I was in control. There would be no more lies, no more manipulations, no more running from the truth. Cassidy had made her choices. And now, she had to live with them,